Good morning, everybody. Hope all is well. It is Thursday, January 19th, 2023. All right, let's kick it off. The Ask Me Anything has begun. So, I've got the Facebook group pulled open, the BTWB squads pulled open, and I've got my most upvoted questions and topics lined out and some responses, so we'll dive right in. There were some, as every week, there were some great questions, and I was almost late to click on the camera because I got up this morning and got myself a cup of coffee and started scratching down my thoughts so I wouldn't get too off track during this. And some of it just took a bit longer to research than I thought, so I was almost late. So here we go. All right, coffee's hot. It's good. First most upvoted question is from Chris W. Says, how did you personally come to realize that lifting heavy every day before a Metcon is too much? Did you always just believe classic CrossFit programming, or did you try heavy lifts every day and have a bad experience? Good question, and this question actually got me thinking, that although right now I know that, but the actual mechanism, and was there a singular event that had an aha moment? I don't think I had one single aha moment that I can give with answering this question. I just think it was cumulative experience over a very long period of time, of what I read, what I saw, what I experienced personally when I spoke with other people and I interacted with them, both individual athletes, like regular people, I'm not talking competitive athletes, but then also competitive athletes, gym owners, coaches, trainers. I think it was the whole breadth and depth of just being around the CrossFit community since 2005. And maybe actually that was a blessing of getting to see the evolution, because I got to see and be a part of CrossFit before that was, quote unquote, the thing to do, right? Lift heavy every day, do a Metcon. So I was around before that time. And I saw what it did, experienced it and all that stuff, interacted with other people. Then that came in, and I got to see what was the difference based upon what was happening previously. And again, through interviews and seminars and traveling the world and all this stuff, I feel like I was in a very blessed and fortunate position to experience a very wide swath of the global strength and conditioning world. And nothing that I saw led me to believe that the payoff was worth it or that the benefit was there. I always just had this sneaking suspicion if I was just an android robot, a motionless robot that was from some other planet and just planted themselves on planet Earth and was just there like a computer just to observe. It always seemed to me that people were just lifting every day because they liked it. They just gravitated towards what they liked, and they created a narrative in their head as to how, of all the things that I could do in the gym, this was the one that if I got better at it, everything about my fitness would improve. That was, I believe, the narrative they told in their head to justify why now we're going to lift every single day. When I believe, truth be told, it's just that people enjoyed it. And I'm not saying that that's a bad reason. I'm very vocal. Sorry. I'm very vocal in these podcasts in saying, do what you like. Like if you enjoy it and it keeps you in the gym, go ahead, do it. But just don't confuse that with a potentially more optimal path to be the best, most well-rounded athlete you could from a true fitness perspective. That's all. You want to lift every day? Have at it. I don't think that's what's going to yield maximum fitness in a minimum amount of time for most people, given their ability to manage their day, to recover, to do everything else that they need to do. I just haven't seen that work well. So, yeah, luckily I never got sucked into that too much. A little bit, but not too much. And then I do believe that people look up to their heroes. I do believe that what games athletes have to do compared to what regular people have to do is different. I believe the two worlds shouldn't really be entangled that much. And that's, I think, a tough trap for regular folks not to fall into, because they idolize whatever person just happens to be really fit and does well at the games. They say that person is my idol. I look up to them. What do they do? I'm going to follow that path. And to each their own, but I'm here to tell you from my career and experience of being very involved in that world that nothing about that sounds like a good idea to me. Nothing at all. It's like if you watch NFL football players, and I know there's somebody who will probably be offended that I'm going to compare a games athlete to football players, but what I mean is the extreme end of a particular sport. People idolize NFL players, they make a ton of money, and they're in incredible shape, and they work out all day, and I think the average lifespan is like 15 years less than most other people because of what they do to themselves. Not a good payoff as far as I'm concerned. To some degree, the same is true with games athletes. Like what they're doing is useful and beneficial in the short term to give themselves a really high level of fitness that's not sustainable for life. I don't think it's a good long-term decision, and I don't think it's the path to health and longevity. And I think it's injurious and a bad call in the long run. And I've seen this play out now over the course of years. I mean, first of all, if you have real conversations with a lot of these people, and again, this is not a knock on this is not a character flaw, this is just like looking up and saying the sky is blue. This is an observation of reality that shouldn't elicit emotion, positive or negative in anybody. It's just observations. They're all just banged up to one degree or another, nursing some sort of tweak or injury or strain, and usually not just one. And if you ask what they've racked up over the years, the list will increase. And then a tremendous amount of them have had surgeries. None of that sounds appealing to me in any way, shape, or form. And it's in all of those lists of tweaks and injuries and strains and things, it's not because they did an extra 3x800 meter repeat each week, or it wasn't because they spent extra time working on their strict pull-ups or their L-sit or things of that nature. It was under the heavy barbell. 9 times out of 10, under the heavy barbell. So again, there are things that competitive athletes do, and they do it with their eyes wide open. I think a bunch of them would say they don't have any regrets, so that's fine. I've got terrible life-changing injuries, and I live in chronic pain from things that I did in the military. I didn't live a normal life when I was doing that, and I'm here to tell you I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat, even if I had to have the same injuries and the same chronic pain. So some people that choose a certain path, and that path comes with certain repercussions, it's still worth it to those people. But that doesn't mean it's a good call for regular people trying to live long, healthy lives and extend their longevity. So I think the two get conflated unnecessarily, and I think it's a very bad call. So that was just from a lot of anecdotal data, a lot of empirical evidence of just observations over the course of 15 to 17 years. It never added up to me. And then also, when the lifting heavy, then doing a Metcon every day became popular, and I'm not saying that nobody can pull it off. There are people that can pull it off, for sure. Be very smart with it, and it depends on how much time you have each day. But it usually tried to get pulled off in the confines at an affiliate in a 1-hour class where you've only got 60 minutes to warm people up, to do some sort of a lift, then to do a quote, workout after that, then to maybe do a stretch and a cool down and get out of there. It's a lot to do in 1 hour, and it's just not going to be done well. Again, if we're an emotionless robot analyzing the timeline and how long it takes to warm up and how long you really should rest between heavy lift sets and all that, none of it makes sense. It's not going to go well. It's not going to end well. It's not going to be a productive session. It's going to be, at best, a rushed, mediocre, blah lifting session that you just ticked the box and said, I did it today. And that doesn't drive results forward, and it's a bad spiral that leads to bad places for people, and it's too much for most people that just are walking into the gym to get fit. So again, that's another thing that I think regular CrossFitters looked at what games athletes did, figured that must be the path, try to crunch it into an hour class, And I really, really hope that we get a lot of affiliates have gotten away from that, thank goodness, and I hope that more do get away from it, to be quite honest with you. So that's about it. I mean, intensity is the key for most of us, not volume. Intensity is the key, and that goes with your heavy lifts as well. So if you want to have intensity with your heavy lifts, do you know what you need? You need time. You need time to recover between lifts, like 2 to 4 minutes. That's a long time, and you need time to warm up properly before you get to your actual working sets. That requires time, because intensity drives results forward, not only in your general fitness, but when you're under the barbell as well. And it's funny, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag on any future episodes, but yesterday Bosman and I did a really fun, informative, great, very not random interview with an exercise scientist, a PhD in exercise science. And so we had this great conversation about the science behind exercise and metabolic pathways and training. It was a great discussion. But it all relates back to what I'm saying is one of the common themes even in the academic literature is that intensity drives results. The evidence is there. If you're rushing what you're doing, you're not doing that properly. Even if you have a relatively high intensity on the workout, like it feels hard and it feels intense, that's one thing, right? But from an absolute mathematical intensity standpoint, especially on something like a lifting day, if you rush back under the barbell every time, sure, it can feel hard, and it is hard because you didn't give yourself enough time to rest, but your loads are going to be less than they would have been had you allowed yourself 3 or 4 minutes between each lift to fully recover. And then since the loading is on the bar, that's that sort of absolute intensity, work being done that we're looking for. And in order to do that, you need to have ample rest periods. So when you are shortchanging ample rest periods in something that's interval based, and lifting is interval based, 7x1, 5x5, whatever it is, you've got work sets followed by rest sets. Well, when you shortchange those rest sets to squeeze in the lift, you are going to shortchange the load that you can have on the bar. You're going to shortchange the possible intensity for that set. You're going to shortchange the results, and you are not going to get the bang for your buck as somebody else did, that instead of trying to do multiple things poorly in 1 hour, just did one thing really well in 1 hour. And they just did a 7x1 deadlift. They just did a 7x1 back squat, or whatever it happens to be. And so, all that's kind of linked and related. And, well, no, I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes. And then I think another thing that helped keep me from getting sucked into that heavy day before every workout sort of a thing is, again, if you can separate yourself from competitive landscape to real world applications, which I think if more people could do that, it would serve them well and help them focus on what they actually need to do. A lot of people you can see people fail a lift in competition. A competition is by design an artificial environment, a man-made, created artificial environment meant to, potentially exceed the limits of the athletes on the field, which is good to weed them out, have the cream rise to the top, makes for good media, makes for drama. In the real world, most of the time, if you look at the work that people are doing, the time domains, the loading, things of that nature, don't get me wrong, overall maximal strength is critically important. That's actually why we respect the heavy days at Linchpin, because we do understand how important it is. So we give it the respect that it deserves. That's important. Your conditioning is important. Your gymnastics is important, right? We're greedy. We want it all. In the real world, not in competitive land, but in real world, a lot of times when people quote unquote fail at something they're trying to do in the real world, it's often not because it was too heavy, 1 rep maximal kind of thing. A lot of the real world is just repetitive grunt work at sub-maximal loading, and a lot of people get tired. Now, yes, your 1 rep strength helps tie into your work capacity without question, but A lot of times when people fail in the real world, it's a muscular stamina. It's their conditioning that fails them. And it's just so funny, that's also the part that most people don't want to work on more, their conditioning, even though I think it would serve most people profoundly well and allow their actual real world work capacity to be even better. But again, if we get back to what people want to do versus what people need to do and what's actually fun, it's a whole heck of a lot easier to say, hey, every day before we work out, do you want to lift? Yes, the parking lot will be full of cars. Hey, every day before we work out, do you want to sprint some 400-meter repeats? No, the parking lot will be totally empty. So it's just one of those things. There can be a disconnect between want versus need, and it's okay. Again, you're a free, autonomous person in the world, at least I hope that you are, and you can do whatever you want. But just do it with your eyes wide open, and then, enjoy yourself. So, good question. All right, next most upvoted question, also about your friend and mine, the heavy lifts. This is from Lisa D. Okay, so Lisa says, last Friday's workout was heavy 7x1 deadlifts. Then we had a overhead pressing heavy day on Monday. And then she let the cat out of the bag. Tomorrow, Friday's workout, just so you know, 7x1 back squats. Is this a max out week? Will you deload in the next couple of weeks? I know you're intentional about your programming, kind of what's the thought process behind that, any general guidelines for 1-rep maxes, frequencies, things like that. So, all right, here we go. So this is an interesting question. So I'll hit it with just some quick questions. Well, these podcasts are for good old Linchpin nerds, right? So we'll nerd out for a little bit here. I'll lose the non-nerds, and that's okay. I'm not trying to keep them anyway. So here we go. Let's see. Is this a max out week? No. Will a deload week be coming up? No. Okay, so there are those questions answered easily, and I'll expound on them more in a second. So is this a max out week? No. On Monday we had heavy pressing overhead, and we've got 7x1 back squats coming up tomorrow. There just happens to be 2 heavy weeks in this week. On any day where like a 7x1 comes up, it is shooter's choice as to how you approach that. And if you haven't, and you're on the private track, what I encourage you to do is on every Monday, if you go into the BTWB app, you look at Monday's training, it will have not only all the different workout options, etc., goal times. It will have a video discussion of that particular day's training for Monday, just like I put on every day. But every Monday there is another video entitled New to Linchpin, Watch This First. So please watch that if you have not already. So it's posted on every Monday. And then on any day that's a heavy day, there's an additional video posted that is all about respecting the heavy days and lifting heavy and how to lift heavy. So make sure you watch that video because it covers a lot of these interesting points. So on something where like a 7x1 day comes up, if you want to go and you're feeling like it, right? Stove's hot, so you're going to cook. If you want to try to set a new all-time 1-rep max heavy single on one of those 7 individual lifts, by all means have at it. If that's not how you're feeling on that particular day, that day doesn't have to be a go for an eye popping out of your head 1-rep max. What that can be is just exactly what it is, 7 heavy singles. That's it. And for a heavy single, it doesn't have to be one of them at 100% or just a smidge more of your all-time 1-rep max. It could be, depending upon how you're feeling, every one of those lifts at 90% of your 1-rep max, right? So if you have let's just say a 400-pound back squat, 90% would be 360. If you have a 200, did I do that math right? If you have a 200-pound back squat, then 90% would be 180, and you just do each one of those singles at that percentage. It could be a little bit lower than that percentage. It could be a little bit higher than that percentage. It would probably be somewhere around there, though, because heavy is a relative thing, and based upon how you feel that day, the 7x1 prescription is not necessarily, hey, you have to max out today and set a new lifetime record. It's today's training is going to be 7 heavy singles. And that is whatever heavy feels like today, based upon how your body feels from the previous training, the sleep that you got, how your nutrition's been, and all of that. And if you have 10 people doing a 7x1, even if they all did the same workout the last 5 days in a row, there's a good chance they'll all feel a little bit different on that day, even though their training has been the same, because they're all living a different life. They all slept differently. They all have different levels of discipline with their recovery, with their nutrition, with their family stress, with their work stress, all those environmental factors that occur outside the walls of the gym that are absolutely critical and influential as to how you feel when your body slips under the barbell. And so that's why it's a 7x1 day, and you have a little bit of personal freedom as to how you're going to get after that. And then with regards to the deload week coming up, or excuse me, the deload week that's not coming up, when you don't unnecessarily, and this kind of ties into Chris's first question, when you don't unnecessarily beat your body down by heavy lifting every day, you don't require a deload week. When you're lifting heavy once to twice over the course of the week, that is a level that is wonderful and sustainable and doesn't tear your body down, which is why things actually work so well at Linchpin. And this is why we continue to have people have gains, and many of them have come from dedicated like lifting cycles where they were lifting a lot more, kind of like what you're talking about, working in some deload weeks, we're going to do progressive overload and all this stuff, and it's beautifully laid out in this chart. And they come over to Linchpin, oh, this looks confusing, we're only lifting heavy like once to twice a week, oh my goodness, this isn't going to work. And all of a sudden they're confused and they're like, why are my lifts going up? It's like, your lifts are going up because you're no longer overdoing it, and you're able to actually lift with intensity, and then program workouts that follow that don't necessarily beat you up, so the next time it comes around, you can do it again and do it well. So all of this is linked into that. And if you are really interested in a bit more geeking out on programming and the thought process behind it and deload weeks, I've got a couple things you can check out. So Lisa, I would check out Varied Not Random, episodes 82 and 83. Those are entitled How to Program Workouts, Part 1 and Part 2. I think each one of those is like an hour. So you can have 2 hours of just programming, nerding out, great stuff. So that should be a good resource for you. And then also listen to Linchpin Conversations, episode number 81. It is entitled Deload Weeks, Necessary or Not. But if you look, well, you'll get all you need in those 2 Varied Not Random episodes about programming. But if you look back on, frequency of programmings or how often a 7x1 or whatnot will come up, and I mentioned this in those Varied Not Random episodes, if you can picture all the various rep schemes you might have for a lift, and I'm sure I'll miss some right now because they're just off my head, but you could have singles, right, 7x1, you have doubles, triples, 4s might come up every now and then, but they're not as popular as like a 5x5. And then when you get north of 5, you could have 7s or 8s or 10s or something like that. Or there's the 2-3-5-10, 2-3-5-10 cycle that we do. You have to, whatever that was, 6 or 7 different classic rep schemes right there. Well, those are going to get analyzed as to what we've done in the past chronologically. Then if we have gone, that's for a back squat, then if we've gone below parallel in other ways, what has that looked like? Because we could have those for back squat, an overhead squat, and then a front squat as well. And then those have to be figured out as to when's the last time they came up, and then what should come up next. But then we have to take a look at, maybe going below parallel for a 7x1 might make sense, but then you see we had a clean and jerk 7x1 and it was below parallel, it was a full clean. Well, now we're going below parallel with that. So there's all these little factors that get checked out to make sure that we're not overdoing or underdoing any particular thing. But if you look back on I pulled out just the heavy days over the course of the last 6 weeks or so. 7x1 back squat is coming up tomorrow, so everybody can enjoy that on Friday. Then you're right, this Monday we had the press, push jerk. Last week's 7x1 deadlift, we also had the Joe Mills squat snatch workout, which is pulling from the ground and going below parallel and has stabilization overhead because it's the full snatch. Previous to that, power clean, front squat, squat clean. We had a heavy day at a high heart rate with that Northwest Regionals event number 1 with the heavy overhead squat. We had 5x3 clean and jerk. We had a heavy day at a high heart rate, 10 down to 1, which was that workout with back squats at 185 or 135, burpees, ring rows, and V-ups. EMOM, 30 minutes, one hang power snatch. We had that 20-minute workout of heavy front rack walking lunges with overhead jerks. Previous to that, deadlift 235-10, 235-10. So let's just take a look at that. I know I just threw a lot at everybody. So on Friday, January 13th, we had a 7x1 deadlift. Okay. Now previous to that, we deadlifted in workouts, moderate loading, heavy days at high heart rate. But now, when was the last classic deadlift heavy day before that, and what was the rep scheme? So again, Friday, January 13th, we just did a 7x1 deadlift. The last dedicated heavy deadlift day was about a month previous to that, December 13th. So January 13th, 7x1, then December 13th, a month previous, and that deadlift day was 235-10, 235-10. So remarkably different than a 7x1. And having those different rep schemes, and if you went back previous to that, you would find a different rep scheme, and then you would find that we deadlifted at different loadings and intervals during the regular workouts of the day. And all of that stuff improves your lifting, which is why when that 7x1 deadlift day came around on January 13th, it was raining PRs in the 7x1 arena, even though we hadn't done a dedicated deadlift day for a month, which at first sounds crazy, right? Like, you're kidding me. It was a month between heavy deadlift days? How is that possible? Everyone's going to lose their gains. Actually, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. Also, because as confusing as it is that everything we did and helps improve that 7x1 deadlift, right? We've done shows on this, which is what do you need to do to improve your deadlift? Well, you got to strengthen your glutes and hamstrings. Your quads would be nice to extend your knees as well. A strong midline would be helpful. Let's have some lat strength in there. And if you actually thought about what you need to do to strengthen your heavy deadlift, and then you look at all the other exercises that we do other than deadlift that accomplish those same goals, when you're training the body as one piece, it shouldn't be mysterious that you don't have to do this one particular lift all the time to get good at this one particular lift, because even the other things that you're doing are strengthening the exact musculature required to do that particular lift. But doing it with intentional variance probably shores up some holes and weaknesses that you didn't even know existed because of what we're going to expose you to, that if you only did the one lift and never got any variance, you wouldn't shore up those holes and weaknesses. So again, it's interesting stuff. This is why programming's cool. But yeah, listen to those Varied Not Random, episode 82 and 83, and then listen to Linchpin Conversations number 81. Okay, final most upvoted question. This is from Kyle F. This is a great one. This is very topical, very in vogue. Zone 2 training. Not Zone 1.9, not Zone 2.1. Zone 2 training. Here's the question. Just having some fun. Hopefully no one, Kyle F. says, listen to the most recent Varied Not Random, all the things that, what does CrossFit do wrong? As a CrossFitter, I'm not really worried about most of the things you guys talked about, but I was wondering your thoughts on the lack of Zone 2 training. I feel like there's steady state workout once a month or so, but seems to be all the rage again for general health and longevity. And I know competitors do it as a way to increase aerobic base and improve recovery on shorter workouts. Thoughts on placing in the program and whether or not it is needed? Great question. And you're right. It is very much in vogue at the moment. And again, having been around for a bit, it's funny to see things things come, and I don't know why. I don't know why they get certain traction in social media or whatever it is, or they're trending, and all of a sudden everyone's chatting about it. Whether it's, I don't know, but there are these cycles, and right now, Zone 2 training is the rage. And I'm not saying that in any dismissive way that it doesn't have value and it's not wonderful. I'm just curious if it will still be the rage 18 months from now. It won't be. That doesn't mean that it's not valuable. It just means people have short attention spans, or something else will grab it, and then this question will be replaced by something else, which is the rage, and we'll have to answer why or why not it's not getting a certain amount of attention. And it's just the world that we live in. But let's get back to the Zone 2 training. So Zone 2 training, generally speaking, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's potentially the lowest training zone used for training purposes. Going for a jog at 70% effort, or heart rate, with the goal of helping you build your aerobic threshold, etc., etc. If I do a little Google search here of the benefits of Zone 2 heart rate training: increase the number of mitochondria, increase mitochondrial efficiency, increase metabolic flexibility, lower resting heart rate, decrease blood pressure, lower risk of injury, improves insulin resistance, and improves your ability to run and cycle longer. All wonderful things, quite frankly. And the overwhelming majority of those, I think, are not specific to Zone 2 training. So I think you could also have that same list of things that I just mentioned there, even the wonderful mitochondrial benefit, in higher intensity training as well. So I think that's just an important point to keep in your head, that Zone 2 training is not the only way to achieve what we just mentioned there. Now, I closed a certain window and now it's gone. All right, here we go. Where is this? So, getting back to, well, here's what I'll say initially. I'm a fan, quite frankly. I mean, I feel like I'm one of the only people all the time that's talking about the benefits of going long and conditioning and get yourself out there and run. Yeah, I think there's some great benefit there. And truth be told, it would probably be nice if more people went out and did exactly that. Go give yourself a 30-minute jog or whatnot at a quasi-conversational pace. If we get back to, if you're doing CrossFit and you believe in CrossFit, there is that hierarchy that Greg Glassman created, and a key word in there is theoretical, because it is theoretical, not factual. The theoretical hierarchy of the development of an athlete, where at the top you had sport, but the base layer there, the base of the pyramid, is nutrition, but above that we had metabolic conditioning, which is exactly what you're talking about right there. And it's not a sexy or flashy piece, not gymnastic, it's not weightlifting, and because of that, the whole want versus need thing we talked about earlier, it's probably going to be one of the more neglected aspects, which is sad. But no, I think a lot of people would benefit from exactly that. I have no drama with that in any way, shape, or form. Now, what's interesting is, again, all coming back down to want versus need, that CrossFit by design, I think people can get lost on the roots of CrossFit, what the purpose was. So CrossFit by design it's a minimalist program. So the goal is to give you the minimum dose possible for the maximum benefit. So that's why we don't have to spend a ton of time in the gym, and we're going to get amazing capacity from that and transference from it. Now, could you potentially always add things to it? If you can tolerate it, sure, go right ahead. But the goal is, what's the minimum dose I can give people every day that will make them darn near superhuman? Because based upon the volume of work that they're doing, which is relatively low, because we're going to do it with intensity, their capacity seems mind-boggling. That's the beautiful, sneaky, magical goal of CrossFit. And with a lot of the shorter time domains, higher intensity, like glycolytic efforts that we do, they have great transference to going long, going out for that 30-minute jog at 60 to 70% of your heart rate, but the opposite is generally not true. So what I mean by that is, and this is an oversimplification, so I apologize, but hopefully it just gets the point across as to why we spend more time in some places and less time in other places. So if you spent a lot of time, this is just for stark contrast examples, if you spent a lot of time long and slow, okay, which by its definition is lower intensity, not that there's anything wrong with that, but a lot of time in that zone 2, a lot of time long, slow distance, you would get better at that and become good at that because you get good at what you do all the time. And then your ability to do short, sharp, high intensity, mixed modality training would undoubtedly suffer if you spent too much time in the zone 2. Spending a lot of your time with the shorter, mixed modality, higher intensity training sessions not only gives you the ability to excel in that domain, but it has transference to still go out and do that 30-minute jog when you need to. So it works one way really well, but the other way not so much. It doesn't mean you should exclude the other way. It's just something to keep your eyes wide open to. And again, not letting the cat out of the bag, but yesterday when Adrian and I were talking to that, doctor, that PhD in exercise science, he said one of the things which was interesting when they were doing studies in the lab measuring things such as VO2 max, and this was from many years ago before CrossFit was quite as ubiquitous as it is right now, is they had these people come in, they were going to do some sort of a study on them. One was a runner, one was something else, but one was a CrossFit athlete, and at that time he didn't really know what CrossFit was. The guy kind of told him, he's like, I don't really run that much, I do this other stuff, and he explained it to him, and the doc wasn't really familiar. He was like, okay, all right, great. Hooked him up, did the tests, and was blown away by this CrossFit athlete, and it wasn't a games athlete, it was just a regular human being doing a workout each day. He was blown away by this CrossFitter's VO2 max. It was like staggering to him, and he didn't run a lot, and it just left the exercise scientist scratching his head being like, what? That doesn't make sense based upon what we normally see in the lab. How is that possible? And now, he understands, based upon how much CrossFit has infiltrated culture and more, research has been done as to why it works so well. But it gets back to what we do has tremendous transference, and therefore gives you the ability to do that. I kind of liken it to learning a second language, right? If I saw somebody whose English was their native language and they started speaking Spanish, and their Spanish was incredible, like almost fluent levels, like, wow, that's amazing. How much time do you spend to become so capable at that second language? And like, well, I'm married to a native speaker, and so, 8 hours a day in my house, we speak Spanish every day. I'm like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense as to why you're so capable in Spanish. And then if I met somebody else, native English speaker, that spoke incredible Spanish, I was like, wow, your Spanish is amazing. How much time do you spend practicing Spanish? And they're like, no more than 30 minutes a day. I'd be like, you're kidding me? Like, you're that competent and amazing in the language and you only spend 30 minutes a day at it? Yeah. Well, then now I want to know what you're doing. Because, yeah, if you're spending 8 hours a day married to a native speaker, that makes sense. If you're having that incredible capacity at only 30 minutes a day, that boggles the mind. That is what beautiful, classic CrossFit, one workout a day, respect the heavy days programming does. It gives you a confusing level of capacity and transference based upon a minimal time in the gym, which is why it was one of the things that confused me about CrossFit initially. Coming from the military, we lived in zone 2. We just ran long all the time. And I looked at CrossFit and I'm like, these guys never run. I'm going to lose my ability to run. And that's not what happened at all. But I didn't understand the metabolic pathways, and I didn't understand the transference, and I didn't get any of that. But back to your question, do I think it's wonderful and valuable? And if you have the inclination and the time to add in some zone 2 training, you've got, my utter, not that you need it, my utter and complete full blessing on that. And I think that it would be a great thing for people to do. And doing something like that once or twice a week probably isn't going to beat you up, and it could be very nice for you. So yeah, I don't think you've got any drama with that. Let's see. Okay, I think that's about that. Those were good. Those were really good. I've got 2 Linchpin shout-outs, and then I got to get my kids up for school. It's just kind of, one of those real life things. All right, 2 Linchpin shout-outs. This is from Carlo D. It says, first bar muscle-up. It says, hey friends, just wanted to share my first bar muscle-up. And he posted a video in the private Facebook group. I'm really super happy about it since I was struggling to get one for ages. I believe this program really helped me get here. Also, to be very consistent with my strict gymnastics that we do every week in Linchpin. Thanks, Coach Pat. And so, congratulations. Awesome for the video. And then the other Linchpin shout-out I will give here, this was posted in the BTWB Squads feature. This is from Ryan J. Ryan says, I've been doing CrossFit since 2009. At my highest level of fitness, I could do over 20 strict pull-ups and over 40 butterfly pull-ups and 10 ring muscle-ups unbroken. I've never been able to do a bar muscle-up or string 2 kipping pull-ups together. So I guess just regular old school kipping. Combination of bad flexibility overhead and uncoordination. Started Linchpin in December and focused on the basic principles of CrossFit, not the sport aspect, which too many boxes program for. Today I was able to string together 5 kipping pull-ups, having never been able to do more than 2. Definitely a credit not only to the programming of the workouts, but the warm-ups as well. The micro-dosing every week adds up. Very cool. So again, we do the fundamentals. And we do the fundamentals, honestly, for one very simple reason, because they work. But it takes it's a unique individual that follows Linchpin. It is. Because it's not just a tagline that we do what's effective, not what's popular. It's a unique individual to know that we're not going to shy away from sprinting and show up and sprint. Because like I said, it's easy to get people to lift heavy all the time. It's tough to get them to do a track day. I don't care. We're going to program track days because they're effective. We're going to do strict gymnastics. We're going to do all that stuff. And if you have the discipline and dedication, it will pay off not only with your fitness level, but also how your knees, back, and shoulders feel so you can live a long life, healthy life. So you only got one body. We want to take good care of it. So that's it. Have a wonderful day. I'm going to get my kids up, get a little breakfast. Thanks to everybody for being awesome, and we will talk again soon.